is there something I'm not seeing?
I'm so tired.
Okay.
Like, thank you. Thank you for getting.
All right. There we are.
I'm like, why can't I see the followers now? Why can't I see? Mind you, I took 2 naps today. Didn't matter. Okay, let me fix my mic.
Yeah, I'm hearing the audio clicking back and stuff like that. Let me. I've muted what I need to mute.
Okay, is this?
Okay, there. That should help me.
Is this any better?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right, boom. All right, so we're live.
Okay.
We'll do all of that over again. Y'all just doing too much, team doing too much. So thank you, Dara Tucker, for joining us. Dara Star Tucker for joining us. Folks who are joining us, tonight's conversation is about Project 2025. What the fuck is Project 2025? When I first learned about Project 2025, I was really just kind of overwhelmed immediately about the concept of like, could this really happen? And it kind of scared me into paralysis. And I think I'm similar to a lot of folks with stuff like this, right? Where it's like, it feels so big that your brain can't even take it in.
Mm-hmm.
Then you brilliantly did a video where you really summed it up in a very succinct way. And you also very quickly pointed out like why this is a problem, right? It wasn't just like, here's the info. It was like, you also synthesized why this is an issue that you need to care about if you are, you know, not even just American, but if you are somebody that considers the fake version of democracy that we have at least better than a real version of fascism. And so I told my Patreon, I told people on my Instagram, your homework is to learn about Project 2025. Watch Dara's video. If anything else that you can find, watch it so that you can come to this conversation and be additive. So that was my first foray, and I really thank you for being so responsive. Y'all, I literally watched the video and then DM'd Dara and was like, can we talk about it? Can you teach us? Can you put us on game? And you were so gracious and willing, and I thank you for just being here and sharing your time.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So would you mind telling us, like, what was your experience with when you first came across, and when did you first come across Project 2025?
I've been hearing kind of inklings of it for a little while. I tend to be in the YouTube space where I'm always, you know, paying attention to these kind of long form informational and educational creators who do these explainer videos, these deep dives. And so I had been seeing a bit about it and hearing people reference it. It's been probably a couple months that I've kind of heard bits and pieces of, and I finally just like clicked on something. It was like, why do I keep hearing this term Project 20? Right. What is this? So yeah, it's been probably a good 6 weeks or so that I've really started to invest myself, you know, and started to understand what it is that's being talked about.
And so what was your first reaction?
Just more of the foolery. It was like, oh, this is, you know, I think probably what your reaction was. It's I don't know if you remember that 2012 movie. I think it was a 2012 movie with John Cusack, where it was just this sort of almost like this doom, this dread, this end of the world feeling like, oh, dear God, this is it. This is the big one. They are really trying to put the nail in the coffin with this one, dear Lord. And the first thing I thought is, you know, I try to get a deeper understanding beyond just the flashy headlines of panic, panic, panic. But it's like, you know, knowing what we do about Trump and how his mind operates and how really unsophisticated he is politically, how likely is he to basically turn, certain elements of his presidency over to these people. He's very likely to do it. So that was the first thing I thought is like, how likely is this to happen? This is somebody's wish list. This is something these folks came up with. Is this just another thing to shock? And, are these just some Looney Tunes people off in the recesses of political extremism? No, they're not. As I know who the Heritage Foundation is, I am very aware of the Heritage Foundation, and these people are, as I said in the video, they're not for play. These are the real deal folks. They've had a big hand in conservative politics for a long, since Reagan, really, and I've done videos on them and their history, and so no, I knew to take it very seriously.
So let's start. Who are the Heritage Group? The Heritage Foundation.
The Heritage Foundation it's a conservative. They call themselves a think tank. And when you hear that term think tank, that can evoke a lot of things in a lot of people's minds. It back in the day, like before they came along, really, a think tank was like an organization that was full of scholars and, people who were, economists and people who were really experts in certain fields that would allow, government to come to them for advice and help government to run more smoothly. And hey, we recommend this and whatever. So, but until they came along, a think tank was really more of kind of an academic institution. They still call themselves a think tank. And they were started in 1973, right in the wake of Roe v. Wade. So right when Roe v. Wade came along was when they kind of blew up, the Heritage Foundation. And Moral Majority came on a little later. So really they're a lobbying group. They are a conservative lobbying group whose job it is to stay in contact with politicians, to stay in contact with anyone who has their hands on the wheels of power and influence them. And they say, hey, this is our agenda. These are the things we'd like to see. And let me grease these palms and have these conversations with Washington insiders, and let's push our agenda through. So the Heritage Foundation has been around. They are really responsible for a lot of the legislation that you're seeing come through around abortion, a lot of the legislation you're seeing come through around trans, banning trans, this and that, banning books and things. They are behind a lot of this, and they are super well funded. They are very well organized. They are experts at what they do, and they're getting bigger and bolder as time goes on. Like they were not the version of this mandate for America, I think the book is called, was not what it is now in Reagan's day. When they first put out this version of this mandate for America, it was economic policy. It was, their conservative agenda, and there were some social issues, but this is beyond anything we've ever seen with them. So they're on crack now, essentially.
Well, you named three things about them that I feel like are real tent poles for believing that people have the ability to get things through, right? So they're well-funded, they're organized, and they're experts.
Yes. So
you've got three elements there: money, manpower, and mind power that are able to push their agenda forward.
Yeah.
When I hear that, the number one concern I have is that I don't know of any other counter organization that has those three things and that can go toe to toe with them.
Yeah. And that's what I said in the little piece in the breakdown I did on them. It's like, oh, well, there are liberal groups in Washington. Of course, there are lobby groups and they're fighting for their liberal issues and stuff. And so, why should we be concerned that the conservatives are doing their thing? They have the right to do their thing. It's like, no, this does not exist among progressives at this level of funding. Their funding early on in the 70s came from the Coors group, the people who actually make Coors beer, the grandson of the man who founded Coors beer, who came to the United States illegally, by the way. His grandfather immigrated. He stowed away on a boat and got to the United States and made a bunch of money during Prohibition in beer. And so his grandson, is this magnate and wanted to further the issues that would help his business and deregulate his industry. And so he put hundreds of thousands of dollars into this group. It was started by the Heritage Foundation was started by a man named Paul Weyrich and Edward Fulner. And Paul Weyrich started the Moral Majority with Jerry Falwell a few years later. So these guys have had their hand in conservative politics for, 50 years. This is like old money stuff, and they are experts. And no, nothing like this on the left exists. A lot of the organizations that are similar on the left, I mean, there are a couple of billionaires like George Soros and the wife of Jeff Bezos. And there are, certain donors who have money who will fund liberal projects. But the majority of those organizations are funded by small donors, people giving $20 and, $30, $40, $50. And there are so many corporations on the right, corporations, multimillionaires, billionaires who are just funneling money into these organizations and have been doing so for the better part of probably 45 years. And so, this is all, it's so much, it's a well-oiled machine, and it's so much better organized than what any of us could even really conceive of, really.
So what is Project 2025? Like, that's the Heritage Foundation. Now, I wanted you to lay out for folks who is behind this before we got to what this is, so that they could understand the gravitas of what Project 25 is. Y'all, I look so white. It is unbelievable. Like, I look like the same color of your door.
No, you don't.
on my computer, I do. I look like an actual ghost. Like, that's how I feel about Project 2025. It's so Dara, tell us, what exactly is Project 2025? Are y'all listening? This is the part where I need you to pay really close attention.
Well, Project 2025 is basically, in its simplest form, it is a wish list. It is a wish list that comes from this conservative political action group, the Heritage Foundation. And it's basically a list of all the things that they would like to see happen with the next Republican presidency. This is not going to be, I hear a lot of people asking, well, what happens when what are the Democrats doing to stop it? The Democrats, all they have to do is get elected to stop it. It cannot happen without a Republican leader. So they understand that. They have made it very clear. We are going to hand this book to the next Republican president, and hopefully we'll be able to get as many things as we can possibly get, on our wish list. So it is a list of recommendations and, just things that the pie in the sky, the best possible outcome for them. It is a list of ways that they can reorganize government, that they can gut all sorts of government entities like the FDA, deregulating the FDA, gutting Social Security, gutting the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, basically anything that regulates businesses, anything that regulates food, anything that regulates water, getting rid of the Department of Education, completely gutting the Justice Department. And a lot of it is tailored to Trump himself. It's tailored to be the most appealing that it can possibly be to Donald Trump, because obviously they know that he's going to be the nominee. Theoretically, it could work with any Republican president, but we all know who the nominee is going to be. So it's not necessarily supposed to be tailored to Donald Trump. But we all know that his agenda, day one when he walks into the Oval Office, which he has very clearly stated, it's all about revenge. It's all about getting back at his enemies. So the Justice Department is one of the primary things he wants to go after. Anything that would have to do with going after him legally, going after his cronies legally. It also has a provision where he signed something called Schedule F. And he signed this in October of 2020. So this is literally just a few weeks before the election happened. And his plan with Schedule F was that he was going to reclassify about 50,000 government employees where they no longer had the protections that like a civil service employee would normally have. As we all know, government jobs tend to be very safe. It's hard to get fired, for better or for worse. It can be hard to get fired from a government job. Those are safe jobs, and they have nothing to, a lot of these jobs, anything it would be affected by Schedule F would normally not be political. You're working for HUD or something. It has nothing to do with whether you're a Republican or Democrat. And normally these jobs don't change from presidency to presidency. Well, with Schedule F, what he wanted to do was give himself the unilateral ability to fire any civil servant that he wanted to fire and replace them with people that would be loyal to him. So basically Trump loyalists, because so much of what he wanted to do was really bordering on illegality, or it was straight up illegal or unethical. And a lot of people who were in various government positions would not assist him. They wouldn't aid and abet him in doing half of the stuff he was trying to get done. So with this Schedule F, which was recommended by the Heritage Foundation, with Schedule F, if you sign that and say, I have the executive power, unilateral ability to fire any of you, then at the very least, then they will be afraid for their jobs if they don't do his bidding. So that's the idea. Replace anyone I want to with loyalists. I can fire anybody I want to. So that's the idea. Now, the Heritage Foundation is now receiving, and they've put this all out there. This is not secretive. This is not something I am interpreting.
Right. This is not.
It's out there.
Here's the theory.
They have what they are calling a right-wing LinkedIn on their website, on the Heritage Foundation site. You can go there now, and they're receiving resumes of pretty much anyone who would want to be involved in a new Trump administration. So they are working on vetting people. They're working on getting people's security clearances. They're greasing the wheels. They want to be ready. And they have said many times from day one, the minute he walks in there, January 20th, 2025, they want to be ready with employees, people to fill every cabinet position, every staffing position. They want to basically just tear it all down. As you hear a lot on the left, we want to tear it all down and build it up again. No, they are actually organizing to do that for real, for real.
Now, you know what the thing is? I feel like people hear this and they think, well, how would that be possible? What I think a lot of us really don't understand is just how suppressed the history of this country has been for those of us who are now in the position to vote, to move things forwards, etc. So things that sound crazy, this is not the first time they happened. Like in World War II, y'all, America was going the direction of fascism. Mm-hmm. Like America didn't jump into World War II because they were like, oh my gosh, look what they're doing to these Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
Look what they're doing to these Romani people. We got to help them out. No, we got bombed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what jumped America into World War II. But America and England were both going in the direction of fascism, and the world was effectively going in the direction of fascism. Mm-hmm. And we hear the word fascism, and I think people think it's some like otherworldly, like they think like it's, I don't know, Senator Palpatine in, Star Wars. Like they think it's a dictator that's like shooting lightning at their hands. or they just think Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And he is one of many. Like there's so many versions of fascism, and what you're describing is an American version of this.
Oh yeah. And all the stuff that was happening in the 1930s in the United States. And I think Rachel Maddow did a book about this, and there's more information that's coming out about just how prevalent this extreme white supremacist stuff was at that time. I mean, there were Nazi groups here in the United States that were having massive conventions, massive meetings. This was not something that was necessarily looked down upon at that time. And so that never really went away in the US. It never really went away. And they have children and they have grandchildren. And there are many people, like I said, the Coors guy who funded the Heritage Foundation in the 70s is the grandson of a German immigrant who got here illegally. And it's like, a lot of those ideas, my degree's in German studies. I'm not trying to dog out the Germans at all.
Wait, side note. Why is your degree in German studies? That feels random.
Such a long story. So it's so irrelevant to anything I'm doing now, but it comes up more often than I would expect.
You're trying to holler at Boris Kodjoe? Like that just feels so.
It's actually helpful in understanding things like this. I'm trying to tell you because people will get in my comments. they'll get in my comments and argue with me. Well, Hitler didn't do this. I look, my degree is essentially in Hitler. Okay. I had to sit and absorb what that man was doing for years. And there's a lot, there are some scary parallels. And a lot of these folks are the descendants of the folks who were wreaking havoc back then, and they never went away. They never actually went away. There are some really undemocratic forces that are at play right now who just have never really, this is what we need to understand. There are some very undemocratic forces who have never really believed in the American ideal. And I got, dragged a little bit on TikTok by certain folks. I mean, not majorly dragged, but there were certain people that got upset with me for saying, we as Black people, like, how dare we not believe in democracy? Democracy, and I'm not just talking about voting, but I'm talking about activism, and I'm talking about organizing and voting, and understanding how the judiciary works and the legislative branch works, and understanding these systems has been the key to our liberation. We cannot stop believing in democracy as Black people. If we don't have that, then we are subject to these forces that are attempting to bring these undemocratic influences into our culture. They have never stopped. They have never stopped trying. This is something very insidious. It's very real. And we don't realize how much just people of good conscience have been staving this stuff off for 80 years. 80 years.
It's a legacy project at that. Yeah. Like, this is the type of thing that's passed down, and it's your family's, task to take up to keep pushing this forward.
Yes. It's their tradition. It's built in. It's what they believe in. A lot of these people have no interest in democracy at all. They're not really opposed to fascism.
What is it that they actually believe in? Because the element of this that I feel like we need to make sure that doesn't get left out is the white nationalism part of it, right? Like, this isn't just,
it's all intertwined.
Like, this isn't just like, we don't want a president, we want a dictator. There's a whole other element, because let me just say this, Zara, you did a video that said exactly what I have been thinking and been saying. We were saying the same thing, which is, I ain't gonna tell you who to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. But all I can really do is provide information, which is the most radical thing we can do at this point, because the effort to suppress information is a whole revolution in itself.
Yeah.
And so many folks are making decisions out of emotion, and it's understandable, but our emotions can also be informed with information as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is a piece of the puzzle that helps people understand the greater picture of things, because we seem to have been tricked into thinking there's a very small number of players that we're dealing with. It's like the president, there's only two options and that's it. And it's like, no, there's a whole foundation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And a whole movement that is pushing things like this. It's not just these two people that are running for office and their cronies.
No, and like the Roe v. Wade thing coming through. No, we don't think about what all of this is connected to, and we don't necessarily know. But that's Heritage Foundation. That's a guy named Edward Bloom who has been hammering away at this for years. I mean, this stuff doesn't just pop up out of the blue when you see certain cases or ballot initiatives that come through, or just suddenly, a state legislature is creating some draconian law around something. This is connected, just as they say, follow the money, but this is not just something that someone sat around and twiddled their thumbs one day and just came up with. This is the result of a lot of planning. And they've been trying to take down Roe v. Wade since 1973. It took them a long time to do it. And they were very patient, and they finally got their guy, and they finally learned how to strategize. And every single Supreme Court justice that was appointed under Trump, he appointed 3 of them, were all Heritage Foundation people. They were all a part of the Heritage Foundation, and they were shortlisted. Amy Coney Barrett. Yes, Brett Kavanaugh. And the other one's escaping me. Yeah, all 3 of them were Heritage Foundation people.
You know what I also learned? That both Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett were a part of the legal team that stole the election from Al Gore.
Oh, wow. Why does that not surprise me?
Right. But that speaks to what you're saying. Like, these people are in the threads of this.
They're connected. And you know what? Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House,
yes,
is a lawyer. These people are elitist. They will go in on elitism, but they are elitist. They're all Ivy League people. They pander to the common man and pretend that they're on their side. These are wealthy Ivy League folks. Mike Johnson is an Ivy League trained lawyer who was behind all of those ridiculous challenges to the election results. He was the mastermind behind all of those challenges. January 6th was the dog and pony show. That was just the circus, by all the common folk that were tricked into participating in the foolishness. What was really going on behind the scenes was legal challenges. And Mike Johnson, who's the head, who has connections to the Heritage Foundation as well, he was the legal strategist behind all of that. They are all connected. This is all connected. None of it's disconnected. No one's acting independently.
So when we look at this and we see, okay.
Neil Gorsuch, thank you.
What is the timeline? Right?
Day one.
They have a 180-day plan.
Yeah. 180 days. That for them, that's a part of the strategy too, is to be able to execute a lot of this within the first 6 months. But they want to hit the ground running. That's something that they are very loud and very proud about, that they want to be able to hit the ground running on day one. Day one is not really day one for them. It's just the day that they get to actually implement things that they have been planning for years. And they have a very willing, they put out the mandate for leadership. I can't remember if it's called the mandate for leadership or mandate for America. I think it's the mandate for leadership. But the Heritage Foundation puts out their wish list every 4 years. Even when there's a Democratic president, they put out a new mandate for leadership. Now, how many of those things are implemented by each president? That's kind of a toss-up, and it depends on how amenable that person is. Reagan loved the mandate for leadership. He implemented, they said, over, I believe it was 2,000 of their individual recommendations.
Wow.
A lot of the crazy stuff, the Star Wars that was going on during his presidency, a lot of his law rules and things that he came up with around how welfare was renegotiated. And so that was all Heritage Foundation. All of those policies that Reagan was implementing that affected us as Black people, all of that came from the mandate for leadership that the Heritage Foundation put out. So he handed that out to his entire staff when he got into office, and he loved it. And Trump, as we know, he's not really a thinker. He's not really a reader. And I don't think that's a secret. One. So as much of that sort of ready-made prefab thing as he can have going into office, all he really cares about is getting back at his enemies at this point and appeasing, the folks that
their
him.
Initiative. So it's like one hand washes the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
I took us on a dovetail. So I want to bring us back to the white Christian nationalist element of this. Yes. Because I really feel like for those folks who are like, oh my God, this just feels so much bigger than us. Like, it just feels very political. There's a certain landing of the plane that comes into play when we discuss the fact that, like, there's a racist undergirding of this that you have to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. So can you just illuminate for us how it fits in? Because they definitely have a Black man in their little commercial to try and make it look like they're not. But we all know there's performances everywhere.
I've done entire bit, but Black conservatives are just a particular craw in my flesh. I don't know. Because I came from a world of conservatism, and that's what I've tried to make clear to people over time. It's like I'm talking about something I know about when I talk about these Christian nationalists and Black conservatives and stuff. That's a lot of the world that I came from. And so, yes, as someone put here on the screen, Marcy says, Mike Johnson is a white Christian nationalist. A lot of these people, Tucker Carlson, a lot of these people are literal. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she wears it proudly. She says we should be proud of the fact that we are white, that we are Christian. She literally white. They won't say white, but they'll say Christian nationalists. Mm-hmm. But it all goes hand in hand. And, we know from this country's history that always goes hand in hand, the white nationalism along with Christian nationalism. So yeah, they're not really trying to hide it at this point. And there's a long history and there's a long tradition of it. And they're just doing what they know. Most of these people come from very segregated environments. The Heritage Foundation, period. Paul Weyrich, who founded the Heritage Foundation, one of the founders of the Heritage Foundation, one of the reasons that he became so politically active is because of school segregation. He did not want private Christian schools to be forced to integrate. Because of course, Brown versus Board of Education happened in 1954. What a lot of people don't realize is it took years for that to be implemented. It wasn't overnight that all of a sudden schools were just integrated. But by the late 60s, that was when a lot of the provisions of Brown versus Board of Education started trickling down to like the South, to Mississippi, to Alabama and places like that. And they started shutting down public schools and opening up private schools. And then state legislatures would fund scholarships for white parents to send their kids to the private school that the Black parents could not afford to send their kids to. This was how they were trying to get around mandates.
Similar to what they're doing with the voucher system.
Yeah,
right.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Yeah, creating these private schools and somehow giving white parents a leg up to be able to send their children to private schools, just as a way of them not having to integrate with Black kids. So Paul Weyrich was really involved in that movement to resist school integration. And that's a lot of where a lot of these private Christian schools started popping up in the late 60s and early 70s. And I went to private Christian schools, and a lot of those exist because of forced integration. So that was the issue that really mobilized a lot of these activists who are now, referred to as evangelicals, and mostly white evangelicals. But a lot of that movement is founded, in addition to Roe v. Wade, it's founded because of school segregation. So the movement itself, a lot of it sprang out from racism, plain and simple, segregation. A lot of these people are old school. Jerry Falwell, old time segregationist. His school, Liberty University, was involved in all of that. It was a segregationist college, Bob Jones College, segregationist institution. So the foundation of all of it is racism.
To me, it feels like people are far too often lulled into the ideology or the lie that because there has been Black success, it is indicative of racism not having its hooks in America in the same way. Mm-hmm. Ignoring the fact that there's always been Black success. There has always been Black people that found a way. There have been freed Black men. There have been Black people that owned slaves because they got free, and the society called for that if you wanted to be a part of high society. Mm-hmm. So the idea that somehow because Black folks have had access to even just material wealth, that it is indicator of racism no longer still being pervasive, is so frustrating to me, because even when we made our own wealth in our communities, they came and took it. Mm-hmm. Like, that should tell you the Black wealth doesn't matter. It doesn't stop racism. That's why it annoys me so much when I see like Kamala, and I mean, Nikki Haley, I expect that, but I don't expect that from Kamala to say like, oh, we're dealing with the vestiges of racism. Not when we have something like Project 2025, where they're not dealing with scraps of racism. Mm-hmm. They're dealing with a movement that is political and that is legitimized by legislation. It's not just a Karen and a Target acting an ass.
Right.
I think when we talk about, like, I had a conversation with this fool on the plane the other day who was like, well, tell me how systemic racism is being implemented to this day. And, I had to stop myself because I was like, I'm going to fight somebody. But in the reality around Project 2025, just on like a basic level, what makes it so dangerous?
Because I think that the basic thrust of Project 2025 and of the Heritage Foundation and of these people in general, and there are plenty of these so-called think tanks, which are really just lobbying groups. Heritage Foundation is not the only one. There are many. There are 50 organizations that are actually partnering with the Heritage Foundation to execute Project 2025. So the term I used in the video was that they're Voltroning themselves together to make one massive, extremely effective body where they're not fighting each other anymore. They're not fighting each other for resources. They're not fighting each other for access anymore.
Do you see this though, Dara? Do you see how they will join together in evil?
Yes, they will. They'll do what they have to do. And I've been doing videos on this for a few weeks now, and I get a lot of pushback on this where I'll just talk about, hey, study the MAGA movement, study these people, study the way that they operate. We're so busy criticizing them, but have we studied them?
Learn a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you getting pushback on?
Oh God, everything.
Like you're being alarmist or something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of the first accusations is, oh, these are scare tactics. You're just being alarmist. And how dare you? And of course, we're all just like watching the horrors that are unfolding in Gaza. And so that's the conversation right now. It's just like, how dare we be talking about Project 2025 when all that matters is Gaza? So now you're trying to, tell me that I have to vote to try to keep Trump out when I can't support Genocide Joe. And I get that. At this point, I'm just like, vote your conscience, do what you have to do. I'm really not trying to strong arm anybody, but I just think it's a red flag when you talk about something that's real, something that's true. I'm telling you, there's a shark in the water. There's a real shark in the water, for real, for real. Project 2025 is a tornado. It is all the things that it seems like it is. So to call that fear mongering or scare tactics or any of that, I think is, to me, it's just a red flag. It's just like, you don't want to hear about it. Okay. If you don't want to get out of the water, that's your choice. You don't have to get out of the water. I want to get out of the water. I don't want to be in the water with a shark. So I'm going to keep telling the truth. We need to be as informed as we can be. Wherever you land is where you land. If you vote for a third party, if you vote just down ballot and you can't support, that the top of the ticket, I get it. I really do have empathy for that. I understand. I empathize. I know where I land. And I don't have any intention of doing Trump round 2. That's what I know. So I'm going to keep telling the truth in spite of the pushback.
So one of the things that I just vacillate on is, one, I see people that are very earnestly and honestly frustrated with the idea that we're voting for the lesser of two evils.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're like, I don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. I'm tired of that. I'm done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, but like, that's where we are.
Yeah.
Like, it's not to say that we shouldn't have a third party. We absolutely should. We should have multiple parties, actually. Mm-hmm. However, you said something a little bit earlier that I think is really significant. And you said the only thing that's been kind of like keeping this at bay has been just like some decent minded people that have managed to continue to like push against it.
Absolutely. That's all that's ever kept evil at bay.
Well, would you say that number of decent minded people is holding or lessening? Because I don't think it's growing in the political base.
I do feel that it's growing. I feel like a lot of us are getting discouraged. I feel like a lot of particularly.
When you say us, who are you talking about? Like the citizens? I mean, like people that are on the Hill.
Oh, on the Hill. Oh, God knows. I don't know. I don't know what my perception is of that. I know that on the right, mm-hmm. it is becoming much more difficult to be a person of conscience. I mean, when I was growing up, you had folks like John McCain who would work with Democrats to, the McCain-Feingold bill or the Joe Leibowitz, I think that was his name. Anyway, they were working on campaign finance reform together, and even Mitt Romney and moderate Republicans, and they've all been pretty much driven out of the party at this point. So on the right, are there people of good conscience that have been allowed to continue to do what they do at that high level? I don't think so. I think on that side, it has very quickly become the party of MAGA and become the party of Trump. So no, I don't think you have that on the right, unfortunately.
So what about on the left? Because there's so many people that feel like, well, the left ain't that left or the right at this point. I mean, they just don't wear the MAGA flag. They don't wear the MAGA hat, but they're also not raising an alarm.
I think it is difficult to work with extremists. I mean, I think, when you don't have full control over both houses of Congress, and, you're never going to be able to push through everything that you want. And if you're dealing with far right extremists, then a lot of compromises are going to have to be made. But yeah, I think we have a ton of people of good conscience that are on the left. Now, what'd you say?
A ton?
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, absolutely.
Name 'em.
How effective are they? I mean, Cori Bush, how effective are they? How much can they really get done? Not a whole lot. I don't.
They're not even being supported by their party.
No, they're not. No.
So then how effective? So I say that because it's like when we talk about voting down ballot and how we vote our conscience and vote with knowledge, it is very practiced. It's practice that will just like vote blue. And on one hand, I'm like, I think that we're going to be pushed in that direction this time by nature of this Project 2025 situation. But I'm also wanting to consider just the understanding that this is not the end. Like, we will still be here after this, right? Yeah. So whatever way it goes, we'll still be here after this. And I think so many folks are looking at this election like a be all end all, not a part of the path that we have to trod forward, right? And the mindset of like, how do we set up that strategy? And I think that's part of our deficit. Those of us that do have heart and compassion, like, we're trying to put out the fire now while they're over here like, well, while they're busy putting out this fire, we about to be planning these 12 other fires that we're going to be lighting over the next few years. And so we all rally, but then we lose our, I won't say our gumption, but we lose like our gusto to continue, and then we rest. I mean, I really feel like 2020, everyone was so concerned that Trump would win again, and then Biden won, and it felt like, okay.
Right.
Like, let's just gather. I mean, I cried.
Me too.
I never cried over no white man. I cried. Like, oh my God, we're gonna be okay. But then now we're sitting here and we're like, this white man is a whole genocidal maniac. And I mean, I didn't know that. He hadn't been given the opportunity to show his ass in that way until here we are. So when I look at the landscape of where we are, I look at the reality of a Project 2025 really coming to realization. A project, when we think of project, it's something that people have been putting energy toward. They've been having meetings, they're in group chats, right? They're having gatherings and thought processes toward this. So it's not just like a random shit that they're trying to blitz.
Right.
No, this has direction. So when I look at that, and then I look at the playing field of what we have, I don't feel like there's a ton of Democrats whose action orientedness is maybe as strong as their morals. And I say that because I don't even hear them talking about this. I heard about this from you. And for all intents and purposes, Cori Bush, to me, Cori Bush is an anomaly because she's one of the few people that came to Congress having had like actual experience as an organizer. Like she was like, that was her profession, organizing. Like she was brought to Congress because people were like, you should run. And she turned them down a few times. Like she was like, But when I look at their people and how hard they go, and the people that we would consider quote unquote our people, I don't feel convinced that they are coming through like the Avengers to shut Thanos down. So I don't know. So which is why I feel like we have to be vested as the people, because they're not going to do the fighting. So then it becomes like, what do we as voters, how do we rally? How do we support each other? How do we garner the wherewithal to prevent this?
Yeah, I think, sometimes we hear it a lot. We hear this a lot, that we become overly focused on these once every 4 year presidential races. And it's just all about the presidency. And it's all about just, we got to save democracy again, you guys. Here we go, another 4 years. And we don't realize that a lot of the fight and a lot of the struggle that happens, just like with the Heritage Foundation and many other groups like it, they don't just organize every 4 years. They're not just getting up in arms every 4 years or when some piece of legislation comes through that they're very upset about. They are organizing, and I call them little worker bees behind the scenes. They are organizing at all times, and they're not just voting. And they realize that because they are a numerical minority in this country, really, that right-wing, hard right conservative movement, they don't have the numbers to outvote us. So if they can't outvote us, they are going to out strategize us. The only way that they can acquire and maintain power is to get their hands on the levers behind the scenes and start manipulating things in their favor. And you can rule by minority in this country if you understand enough about how the system works. That's just the way it is. I mean, when is the last time they even won the majority of the popular vote? They are winning elections by minority. So yes. I think just that understanding and that belief that they have, and that realization that they have, that is the person is saying here, grassroots movements and the organizing and things like that. Like I said, the civil rights movement, real organization, political organization at the local level, running for it. Do we run for state offices like they do? Do we run for school boards? Do we run for voting boards? Do we run for library boards? Do we run for state legislature? Do we run for, judges and county clerks and all of these positions? That's where a lot of the power is held anyway. And the state legislature, they make all the rules around voting.
I know.
All this gerrymandering and stuff that can't happen without a bunch of right-wing folks at the state level deciding that, they're going to put you in these counties or districts that benefit them. And silo Black folks off into these crazy looking districts so that our votes don't count, in the districts where they don't want them to count. This kind of really underhanded backdoor manipulation and that kind of thing. It can't happen if we're running for these local offices, if we are truly involved and participating beyond just the presidential election. So that would be my first bit of advice, is study them, watch how they operate. What they're doing is what we need to be doing. That unified thing, regardless of the fact that you may not agree with the person that's standing beside you, but they are standing on the same side as you. Figure out a way that you all can, first of all, Voltron yourselves and work together, and then understand that this goes beyond just presidential elections. And we've all got to kind of be ready to get our hands dirty. And, I don't know.
We're all throwing stuff against the wall, right? I mean, I think that they are driven by something that we have yet to find to drive us.
Mm-hmm.
They have an insatiable.
Yes. If I weren't on camera, I would name what it is, but yes, absolutely. It's just this driving energy that something visceral and ancestral in them is telling them, you must
supernatural.
You must dominate, you must rule, this is yours. You cannot let these people take it away from you. Fight with every last fiber of your being. And that's how this country was acquired.
Yes.
That's why they're here. So
because the people they were fighting didn't have that. They was like, what's up, y'all here? Let's go to dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think so many of us are like literally ill-equipped.
Yes.
Like it's not that we don't have the fighting spirit, but
it's an entitlement. Yes. Yeah, that entitlement.
A darker thing that doesn't seem to die.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't.
Like it never rests, because even when they do get in power, they like do this to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like they do this to each other. They're like, we're bored. Like we need to dominate this class. Like we need to find, for all intents and purposes, the Jewish people that were in Nazi Germany, they were Germans. They all looked the same. But they were like, nah, it's not enough. We got to run shit. And then I'm like, who's we? They even was like blue eyes, blonde hair. Taylor didn't even have blue eyes and blonde hair. And his grandmother was Jewish. So for us, I feel like one of the things that I be trying to get to the root of Dara is, what is the thing that unifies us as strong as the thing that unifies them? And I don't feel like I have been able to really discover what that is. They even have a fake God. Because like their Jesus is not Jesus. They made up a whole other, it's Jesus. You know, it's like Jesus. And they, because Jesus looks at them and is like, how did I get in it? Came on it. I never said that. So even in that, like the spiritual tie that could maybe get people together, they've co-opted. So because sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe if the Christians got mad enough about them co-opting their Christ, that could get them to move, right? Like maybe like the same way the Heritage Foundation has a bunch of little pods outside of them that have now joined forces with them. Like, okay, what are the little pods that we have that are driving us that we can then connect together on? You have people that are like very fervently about like police brutality. You have people that are very fervently about, education, etc. But it doesn't keep the connectivity the way that they do, because ultimately, even when they have different foci, at the end of the day, they have one main goal, which is if I'm in power and you're in power, then we're in power.
Yeah.
And we're not chasing that. So y'all, what are we? That's my question to the chat. What are we striving for? Why is it that the quest for, I just answered my own question. You can't win games on defense.
I think
go ahead. I'm ranting.
Well, I think a lot of our politics are dominated by an idealism, and there are a lot of young people on the left. I think there are a lot of folks who just have not discovered yet what the political process is about. They know how to protest, they know how to use hashtags, they know how to put watermelons in their profile name, and they don't necessarily understand. I know this because I have conversations with these people in my comments every day. They really are not plugged into how the political process works. And a lot of them don't have the patience to understand or walk through that political process. But I did a video the other day talking about our connection to our ancestors and how hard they fought. And many of them fought a lifetime to push that boulder up the hill 6 inches. And, how dare we not believe in the democratic process? How dare we get tired? How dare we sit down? And I got some pushback on that, like, oh, you're guilting us into wanting to vote because of our ancestors. It's like, no, I'm reminding you that you are part of a lineage. We all exist on a spectrum. None of us, we're not the first ones dealing with these issues. No. We don't have it harder than our ancestors did as Black people in this country. We do not have it harder than they did. And we are leaving a legacy for the generation that's coming after us. And so if we understand that we exist on a spectrum, this is not just about us. That connectivity, I feel that very, very strongly. So that empowers me, that emboldens me, that causes me. I mean, I go back as someone put in the comments here, it's like, go back and study the movements of the past, go back and study the civil rights, go back and study how those people organized. And
you'll also learn in that, because I just saw someone say like, we need our own leader. We need a great leader like the 60s. And it's like, there were so many leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't just one.
It wasn't just one. Yeah. And they were, Montgomery bus boycotts, and you think about what it took and the solidarity that it took to pull off a lot of those demonstrations and movements and the sit-ins, the Nashville lunch counter sit-ins and things like that. It's like, man, the will that they had, because they understood. And I think that's a lot of what it is like they understood that there was a very real and present evil. And it was very black and white. It was like, hey, this is right, this is wrong. We are very clear on where the moral imperative is, and this is what we're fighting for. We are all in lockstep, and it was unambiguous. And one of the videos I put up today was just like, hey, don't try to tell me we are in a position of moral. We are not in a position of moral ambiguity right now. We got a lot we're grappling with, and I don't know that many of us are very excited about what our choices are. In terms of just the election. And so I think it's just harder to gain that solidarity when there is so much ambiguity, when it does feel a little murky. I think that's what makes it a little more difficult. But then when we see that we have a real and present threat on the right that is very morally unambiguous in my estimation, that makes it a little clearer. At least we can agree about what we don't want. Yeah. We can agree about what we are running from, and that's kind of a sad motivation at this point. But it's real, it's true, it's not manufactured, and it's not a scare tactic. It's very real.
I think there's also just like I put up this comment here. Someone told me they used to throw hands if people tried to ride the bus during the boycott, and I thought that was hilarious and amazing, because I think we romanticize also that everybody was down like in the 60s for what needed to happen. And it was like, no, like people had to hold other people accountable.
Yeah.
Like folks had to be willing to say, nah, you can't. Like, this is real. This is very serious. There's so many folks that are like, man, like I can't lose my job, or I can't, man, these white folks is nice to me. I can't disrupt these white folks. But I also feel like when I listen to what you're saying and I think about what they're doing with Project 2025 and this effort to continuously revert America back. Y'all, Jim Crow did not happen just like, oh, there was the civil rights. I mean, there was the Civil War and then voila, Jim Crow. There was a process.
Yeah.
That led to that. Black people did have like experiences of, okay, maybe we gonna be okay. And then systematically,
they were running for office. They were winning. They were building towns. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay. There were black towns that were popping up. There was wealth that was starting to be established, communities that were starting to be established. And yeah, Jim Crow was a very targeted, directed, and organized system of oppression and apartheid that was directly, geared at tearing all of that down.
But my point is that I think people think that it can't happen again because they're feeling like it's going to be some overnight thing, and it's like, no, there was a setup. That got to that, and we are watching that setup happen again.
Yeah, and they're not being quiet about it is the thing. They're not being quiet about it in the least. They're being very loud about it, and they're very proud. If you watch, there is a clip of the Heritage Foundation's meeting, and you should get curious enough just to go online and watch just the little informational video that they put up, and they're telling you exactly what it is that they're doing. And I'm not trying to preach alarmism like they're going to go in and enslave us all again. But you don't know about that slippery slope. You don't really know how that creep will necessarily work. It's like once you let go of the wheel, you don't really have control over what goes on. And a lot of things that make sense in their minds, it just. They're calling themselves the party of law and order. So you can do anything under the guise of trying to maintain law and order. And there are some I really just scratched the surface in that video of what is in that report. Now, is every single part of that necessarily going to be implemented? Who knows? but they're going to try. And what they're going to do is they're going to gum up the legal system for a really long time, trying to do a bunch of stuff that may or may not even be legal. But the fact that they want to do it, the fact that it's in their mind to do it,
and they have a Supreme Court that will support them doing it.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, I wanted to have this first initial conversation because I know for so many people, this is their first initial like awareness of Project 2025. So for those of you who are just joining, please go back to the beginning so that you can listen to Dara's explanation about what Project 2025. Make sure that you go to her page and watch, the first scratch the surface video that hopefully will get you more in line with your activism. And the thing about it is that when we talk about what can we do, we've talked about a couple examples when we talk about getting involved in your government, right? So actually running, challenging these people in your own jurisdictions, et cetera. Mm-hmm. We talk about organizing, and organizing doesn't just have to be like an official 501c3. Mm-hmm. You can organize your friends. You can organize I know some of y'all are in like parent groups, right? So there's ways in which to interact in those spaces. I think there's been a very concerted effort over the past, I'm 42, so I would say over the past 40 years, to make political awareness a private matter, which we know is always trying to divide and conquer, right? Mm-hmm. And keep people from talking to each other, et cetera. Even attending your school board meetings, your city council meetings, being a presence, mm-hmm. because they're able to get away with doing all these things because there's nobody there saying, hey, what the, or there's not enough people there. And then they just get stronger and stronger. And mm-hmm. when I see people in the comments, Dara, who are like, I'm tired, I'm mm-hmm. exhausted, I'm just not going to vote. I'm over it. We're here. We're all here. Someone said book clubs. That's another place to organize. Like, we're still here. We're talking about the past in the present because it's still here too. Mm-hmm. And so much of the movements that happened in the 60s were in churches. And we're seeing that so many of our churches have also gotten misguided mm-hmm. In how they're centering what's important for our community. They have now taken on a lot. I've seen a lot of pastors take on the mission of individual exceptionalism mm-hmm. as like your way to connect with God. Mm-hmm. And that ends up being counterproductive to like, okay, let's as a community rally against these factors and forces like Project 2025 that are actively trying to undermine us. Yeah. So in summation, could you just sum up real quick? What are the ways you feel like Project 2025 undermines the constant quest for Black folks in this country towards true liberation and equality?
Well, as I said before, I think Project 2025 at its heart is deeply undemocratic. And I think that we as Black people must continue to believe in the democratic process. As clunky as that process has been throughout our history in this country, and obviously we've been dragged up and down the streets by democracy in this country. We have seen it all. We have been victimized by the systems that rule this nation. So we know how ugly it can get, but we should also know that when we can utilize those tools and those levers of democracy to our advantage, then we can win. We can overcome, as they used to say back in the 60s. We shall and we can overcome. So our strength, as far as I'm concerned, in combating movements like this and initiatives like Project 2025 is to continue to believe if Project 2025 is deeply undemocratic, then we combat it with our belief and our investment in democracy, because that's the only reason that we're still here now, is our ability to organize, our ability to mobilize, our ability to utilize the judicial system in our favor. All of these grassroots movements, all of that is democracy. And we cannot allow that idea to be co-opted or stolen. We can't allow our belief in that to be curtailed because these forces of evil are trying to do what they're trying to do, because they've been trying to do what they've been doing since the founding of this country. But I think that a lot of the levers that were set up when this country was founded, whether they were ever meant to work for us, they can and they must work for us. We must make those levers work in our favor, and we have that ability. The thing that I am observing now, particularly with the younger generation, is the discouragement and the lack of belief in it, and that willingness to sit it out, because we have the numbers, y'all. We have the numbers. We are not outnumbered, but they have a belief in what they're doing that we've been talking about here today, that we don't necessarily have. That belief in our ability to affect change, somehow they have that deep on the inside of them. And we still are kind of searching for it. We're still trying to figure it out. You know, do we believe that we deserve it? Do we believe that we can out-organize them, can outvote them, can whatever. But we got, there are twice as many of us as there are of them. But like the apathy and that kind of thing, that would be our undoing, our own apathy. So as I said, organizing at the grassroots level, it does not mean voting for a candidate that you can't support, because I am not about rubbing people's noses in that and spooking people and making them fearful. It's like, no, if you hear about Project 2025 and it is concerning to you, but you still don't feel that you can vote for Joe Biden, organize in another way. Become active in your school board, become active on the voting board, become active in the state legislature, city council, whatever you can do at your local level, calling your congressperson, understanding what's going on at the local level is so much more effective and so much more powerful than what we realize. But we don't necessarily feel empowered. So that's the message I would want to communicate now, is that we are stronger than this. We are stronger than them. But do we understand it? Do we know it? Do we act like it? Because we have the ability to combat this. We got to know that we can.
The thing that I will close on that really stands out to me, something that you said that really stands out to me, is just about the concept of democracy and people's, particularly young people's, distrust in it.
Yes.
I have a distrust in how this country performs democracy, because I feel like it gives breadcrumbs while still operating as an autocracy at the top, right? And as an oligarchy. It's run effectively by the richest folks and the corporations and the money. But in certain spaces, they'll let us get our little shit off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think when we talk about the levers and the fight for democracy, one of the things is they're fighting to make America great again.
Yes.
Which by the language says that they want to revert back to an America that existed previous. Mm-hmm. We all know ain't never been a version of America yet that was the hot shit to go back to.
Right.
In that, I say our quest is not to preserve democracy, it's to realize it in actuality.
Yes.
And I think in order for us to even do that, y'all, we got to really understand what democracy is supposed to be.
Yes.
And that is going to be that's my next one. That's my next video. We're going to do my next live. I'm going to have somebody up in this piece.
Yeah.
To teach us. Maybe Professor Kimberly Crenshaw will do it. We got to understand what democracy actually is, because I really feel like, Dara Star, we don't know what we're fighting for.
We don't.
They know what they're fighting for. We just know that shit is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, we're fighting cynicism. I'm even seeing some of these comments. I finally figured out how to look at some of the comments over here, but we're fighting a lot of cynicism, which is understandable. But we cannot give. This is one of my core values. I do not believe in giving into cynicism, because that in and of itself, that diminishes us. That does not serve us. The cynicism is not fruitful. It is not productive. There's no
Your video
future.
woke me up out of it, just so you know. So your core value is valuing.
Thank you.
I was over here like, fuck these niggas. Ah! And then I saw your video while I was in DC.
Oh, wow.
Like, God damn it, Josh. Why are you pulling me back? Something keeps pulling me back. Carry on, sorry. I just want to let you know. I want to affirm for you that you're doing what you're supposed to do.
I'm glad to hear that. And like I said, I try to put what I'm doing out there with compassion and with an understanding that we are in a difficult place. But I believe that we are in, as a Black woman in the United States of America, I acknowledge that the position we are in now and the decisions and the choices that are before us in terms of our voting options are really not all that different than they have ever been. You know, it feels very present because of social. Would you say?
Yeah, that's the biggest lie. That like, this is the worst. And I'm like,
right. No, our country was founded on genocide. It's never not been a conflict. We've never not been, and I did a whole video on duality. We've never not been in a place where we had to understand how to hold these multiple things at once. This is a skill we've always had to have, especially as Black people and as a woman or whatever. I mean, you know, these aren't new decisions in front of us, but there are, you know, social media can make things seem much more dire than what they are, and it can lend to that sense of discouragement and the cynicism. But our fight is the same as it's ever been. And so again, feeling that sense of connectedness to that continuum that I was talking about, sense of connectedness to our ancestors, and that, you know, let that push you forward. Let it push you forward, and think about the kind of world that we want to leave to our children. And that can't happen if we're not in a place where we are mobilized and we feel like we can be effective. We have to continue to believe we can be effective. So I know I sound like some sort of an idealist or a preacher or something.
Well, you need that. We need that.
I believe that strongly.
We need people who, you know, dream and think that way. I mean, I was getting my nails done today and I was watching HGTV because that is what my nail shop always has on. And, you know, this white man was talking about this project that he was undertaking with the house. And he was like, you know, I never think it's going to be as hard work as it is. And he said, I consider that to be one of my best traits, because that means there's nothing that ever stops me.
Yes.
From stepping into the fray.
Yeah. That's an optimism, or that's an idealism or something. And you can move mountains with that if you can tap into that expectation that it's just, hey, you know, we can do this, even if you actually can't do it. Or you can't get as close to it as what you think you can. But the idea that you think that it's possible, you believe that it's possible, is a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing.
The comment I had up, and I am trying to wrap this up, y'all. The comment I had up was about just like this idea that I don't want to put my energy into electoral politics. I'll put it into organizing. And what I just want to point out is that the way America is set up, the two are intertwined. You know, I get it, because I don't want shit to do with electoral politics either. But I also know that in order for organizing to function, there's always a wing of the organizing that is involved in the electoral politics, because the policies that are part of the organizing have to get fought for, right? Mm-hmm. Like the lobbying, the city council, the budgets, et cetera, like is oftentimes a part of the organizing, whether you're organizing around prison abolition or defunding the police or education reform, et cetera. There's always a wing that's like, we got to go over here because they're going to try and do something to make the work that we're already doing harder to do. And if we don't pay attention, they will pull it out right from under our nose.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dara. So some action items for you guys. 1, continue to educate yourselves on Project 2025 and understanding its full scope, the ramifications of if it were put in place. I implore you to approach all of your learning with no ego and no emotions. I know that it's hard to do, and I say that because there's a piece of you that has to come to it with as much objectivity as possible to just take the information in and then process it through your system after. Because when you're reading this stuff, it's so frustrating. It's so irritating, and it can be so dense and also scary that it can shut you down. And that's how I felt when I first stepped into it. And when I saw Dara's video, I was in a clear headspace. And that's why I was able to receive it. I was in a clear headspace because I had had a good day. And I had been around a lot of good people. And I felt hopeful. And so it allowed me to read this fuck shit and not completely dismantle, but instead immediately DM. And that's how I got Ms. Dara Star Tucker here. My third thing I would like to ask you all to do is to really consider what community means to you and to really look up what democracy means.
Yeah.
And what it's meant to them and what you want it to mean. I think one of the things I took out of this conversation is that it's not that I didn't know this, but it's even more affirmed. Like, we don't have a North Star. We are, when we follow in the dipping gourd, what are we walking towards?
Yeah.
And what does freedom actually look like besides just, not being under the thumb of white supremacy? And the last thing I'll ask you to do is to subscribe to my Patreon. So there's that. And the final thing I'll do is ask you to follow and subscribe to Dara Tucker's. Because I see people in here saying, we need charismatic leaders. What the fuck you think we're doing? What do you think we're doing here? This is charismatic leadership. They playing us. I'm ever so often. This is charismatic leadership. You think because we're not in a suit and tie, we're not in the pulpit? Baby, it's 2024. Charismatic leadership is existing in a myriad of different ways. We have expanded our world. I mean, look at what we're looking at in Palestine. Mu'taz Aziza is one of the biggest leaders in Palestine, and he is a 24-year-old journalist with a camera. Charismatic leadership is not determined by the leaders. It's determined by y'all. The same way that y'all determine who's famous. I blame Taylor Swift and Kim Kardashian on y'all. And Future, for that matter. Darren, you have a fantastic evening. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Welcome back anytime. I started this space because I do the radio show, the Amanda Seales Show. We're syndicated in select cities across the nation. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, but I only get to talk about things for like 5 minutes. So something like Project 2025, I can spend 5 minutes on, then I got to move on. And, who knows, maybe next break I'm talking about Usher. So I'm like, no, I need other spaces to have full conversations. And I really appreciate all of y'all joining us on a Tuesday night. And I want you to continue to having these conversations. And the last request I have for you is to tell 3 people about Project 2025. I know a lot of millennials and Gen Xers are in here. Y'all remember chain letters. Y'all remember those emails. And it said, if you don't send this email to 3 people, you are going to get hit by a bus. Or then they flipped it and they'd be positive. And they'd be like, if you send this to 3 people, you're going to get $10. You're going to win something. Whatever you need to encourage you. Consider it your charismatic leadership to spread the word, because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And at the very least, we can take their lemons and make some lemonade. Dara, tell the people where to find you.
They can find me anywhere. I'm on all the social media platforms. Instagram is my name, Dara Tucker B. And TikTok is Dara Star Tucker. I think it's on the screen now. Dara Star Tucker, Dara with one R, Star with two. And I do a radio show in LA now once weekly for KJLH. So I would love it if you came on, Amanda, at some point. We'll have to arrange that.
I touch my notes. I would love to.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation with you. So yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm everywhere, just all the platforms and things. I also want to leave you all with the admonishment, as we used to say in the church world. Everybody has a job to play. And even for the person who was saying, I would rather be involved in organizing than electoral politics. And yeah, it's all tied. But if you have, you have limited energy, you have limited time, whatever you can do, whatever the thing is that you can do, find whatever that thing is your hands can do and do it, because it's all needed. And we need to be seen in every arena, in every area. We need to be present and accounted for. And I think a lot of us don't understand how much our presence is needed. But if you're tired, rest. And if you can work. And if you can only do one thing, do one thing. But don't think that you don't have the ability to affect change because you do. I make videos. That's what I do. I can't say that I'm necessarily the biggest. I'm not the one. I guess I'm by myself now. I'm not the one in pumping my fist and holding the signs. I'm not really a big street activist. You're not going to see me at the rallies with a bullhorn going off and leading the chants, because I'm just not that person. So don't feel like you have to do everything. Don't feel like you have to be all things in any kind of a liberation movement. There are roles. I'm a strong believer in that. There are roles that every person has to play. So don't let anybody get you off track, convincing you that you're supposed to play this role because they play this role. You have your role to play. I am an educator and a speaker and a communicator. So that is the primary role that I play. And Amanda would not have been aware of Project 2025 if I had not been playing my role. If I felt like my role was to get out and do the chants, I would not be as effective as I am in the role that I'm supposed to be playing. So understand where your gifts and all of that is, and the things that really get you charged and get you excited, and get involved in that. Understand what your role is and play that role to the best of your ability.
I know y'all are like, where the fuck she go?
I heard my voice where you went
in the other room. I heard my voice in the other room, and it was like, what's happening? And my cat had stepped on the keyboard and it started a previous video. But y'all,
I was ready to keep tempting. I was
just like me. I was like, why does the burglar sound like me? What kind of sick shit is that? You trying to rob my house using my voice? That's a film I don't want to be in. Thank you so much. I agree with everything you said. For y'all who know that I have my brand, Smart, Funny, and Black. Smart, Funny, and Black, our sigil speaks to exactly what Dara Tucker is talking about. There's a multi-pronged approach to revolution. Some of y'all might be fighters. You know what I'm saying? So we need you there to scrap. Then we have the folks who are the bibliophiles. Those are the folks who are going to be in them books like, no, it says here. That's our woke fam. First one's Rebel fam, then our woke fam. Then we have our artists, right? And artists are creatives, and creatives can use their creativity beyond just artistic mediums, right? Creatives are imagining other ways and systems and organizations that can function. And that's our culture fam. And then you have the folks that are just fly. And Black people, we need those folks. Just personality, innovation, and flyness. You telling me that the boycotts, I want to know who used to show up to the boycott with the outfit. Where's the story about that person? Because you know there was at least 2 sisters that they'd be like, what do you think Sherry ain't gonna wear today? And that gets you through. You know, so that's our oh my God, Culture Fam, Fly Fam, Rebel Fam. And damn, I forgot the fams. I'm so hungry that I forgot my own brand. How about that? All right. I'm going to go eat something and then I'm going to go sleep. And I appreciate all of y'all who got supers right here for this chat. So I thank you. And again, you can follow Dara and you can follow me and you can connect with each other. Project 2025, learn about it. The next conversation, it may not be the next one, but I am going to have a conversation titled, What the Fuck is Democracy? Okay? Because a lot of us, we don't even know. We just hear that word going around all willy-nilly. And we're going to talk about what they've been saying it is.
Yes.
And what it could be.
Yes.
Have a good night, y'all.